Welcome to the podcast where we discuss all matters financial planning and investing. This content contains general information only and may not be relevant to everyone. Please contact our office to make sure and determine if this is relevant for you. Hi and welcome to the podcast. I'm joined with Cole Eccles. How are you, Cole? Today we're talking about, should you pay off your debt or invest? Have you got any first thoughts about what springs to mind about this?
As with everything, each situation is equally individual. I think rules or thoughts we can have in mind with. For me, there's a good debt and a bad debt, and a good debt or anything that's going to make you money. If the funds are being used to invest in something that's going to give you an income, business, or you're investing into the share market, property, as long as it's making you money, and the cost of that money is less than what that investment is going to make you, then that's a good thing. And we obviously know the bad things like credit card debt, and call it depreciating assets or high interest.
Yeah. The high interest loans kills a lot of people. And when it comes to debt, it's all about leverage. And a lot of people talk about property investment and they use a lot of leverage into that. And what you find is a lot of people are comfortable borrowing a huge amount of money to go into a property because they feel like it never goes down. If you talk to someone about borrowing money to put in the share market, they're terrified. There's no way in the world they would do that. Long-term scenario, they both have their pros and cons and their risks and the upside. What I find is really the power, if someone's trying to move forward, they're going to be using some form of leverage. Generally, people are going to have it no matter what. When they buy a house, they don't have all the money. If they're trying to build wealth, they will try different things. There's so many different options out there where to actually put some money to try to make a return. What I find, a lot of people are backwards in the structure of their investing. So there's a lot of accounts where you put some money in and potentially get a bit of a return and those sorts, where they never use the strategy, what's called debt recycling, to pay off the home loan first. Every dollar outside of your home loan, if you have one, is really debt money. It's not spare money or cash because you owe the money. Try not to pay the bank back and see what happens to your house. What would actually happen? They just rip it apart, right? There's different forms of debt that trying to buy businesses, like you mentioned, property, you got the share market, you got a whole bunch of things people go into. But what I find as well is what you mentioned on that first bit. A lot of people get stuck into the wrong type of debt. And what sort of debts do you find they are? Yeah.
Just talking to a colleague in Luther, and the son got offered a second year apprentice, his first career card, just say they had some sort of
credit rating.
Not a friend with him, I think a 20-year-old in year 16, his first loan, so it's like his first debt. And when you think about interest rates of 20% and you borrowed, say you've maxed it out, and you look at how much you're repaying and what part of your repayment got actually paid, like with a debt.
There's so many ways to get into the bad debt scenario. One of the clients I was doing a cash flow with, we were trying to figure out where all the money going. Like they earn actually very good money, but a lot of it was disappearing. It was on the app. What's it? Buy now, pay later. That is the worst concept ever, because when you've got credit cards or you've got the buy now, pay later scenario, it's like it's getting the purchase now and worrying about the money later. If you don't have the money, don't buy it. So many people will be such better off. So I think there's people trying to give you credit everywhere. Who are the wealthiest institutions in Australia? It's the banks, right? Because at the end of the day, it's not the Australian dream to have a 40-year mortgage, but most people have a fair mortgage for a long period of time, which costs them a lot of money over time. And car loans, I think a lot of young guys get caught in the car loans and think, I'll save tax, I get a new car. Actually, the best way to own a car is to own a car, not to buy an 80 or 90 or $100,000 car because you've got access to credit. What I just find that so many people get stuck in the trap of feeling that when providers put it down to a weekly amount, can you afford $100 or $50 or $80 so that you can have that shiny object, whether it's a car or whatever? That's how they really get stuck into those bad debts, because it's a really I want, and we are in that world where we want a lot of different things, and we'll get it paying with credit or bad debt. Can keep us trapped for a long time. If you never get out of that, you can never start getting into investments to replace your income over time, whether it's superannuation, whether it's property, whether it's a share market, whether it's a business. You're going to need a fair bit of money to replace that income. Like most of Australia, I'm not sure what the average is, but let's say it's 80,000 or 90,000. That's a lot of passive income to replace to continue some sort of life down the track.
And with the credit cards and the buy now, pay later, the new loan fees and that, gratification to someone doesn't find a parlay to you, oh, it's not a credit card, so I'm not locking that off over 3 or 4 times. But still, like you said, it's getting something now that you actually can afford. And like there were young people buying expensive vehicles, and some of them are self-employed as a tax deduction for $1, and you only get at most 47 cents back. Unless it's like a work ute that's going to actually, without that, you can't
Do your job.
job. But anyway, you look at the young kids, and like I said, the white kids, it's a little lot of money, but when you're 18 years old, you can do it at 30 or 40 years instead of paying it into it. If you put that $50 away into some sort of investment, if it's a bank account, you're getting compounding interest.
Yeah, they haven't really thought about what their financial goals are, or if they want to get into their own home or investment property or share market or what have you. So they're basically got leftover money. Generally, a lot of people in their life, they'll just spend that. It just disappears. But also getting the trap into the credit cards and so forth. Yeah. You're paying a lot of money for that privilege. I don't know, it's actually probably not a privilege, but it really just stops a lot of people over a lifetime. Exorbitant amounts of money go out on these things, and it's incredible. It doesn't matter what you earn a lot of the time. It's like what you spend is what's most important. A lot of people we've got clients who earn $500,000 a year and they're terrible with money, haven't got $1 left over. Yeah. You just look at all the things that they feel is really important, and to them it is. So it's like finding that balance. With the good debts, we've got mortgages on, potentially it could be investments into property, into the share market. Could you be your own home and things like that? So there's a real difference about something that's going to make you money over time, and then something that's going to be drawing some money out of your pocket, which is really cool. I think before investing, how do we get rid of that debt? It's got to be gone. Generally, to get bank loans and so forth, it accounts to your borrowing capacity. So reducing that down, but also reducing what's coming out of your pocket each week. And even if you're saving up for holidays, a lot of people put holidays on a credit card and it takes them 12 months to pay it off. So financially, they don't get anywhere from year to year. And that progress really limits a lot of people, I find. Also, I think the debt comes down to sort of risk profile as well. So a lot of people haven't thought too far about what they could do to borrow money to go into different investments, and because that may feel risky just because their sort of relationship with debt. Okay.
With that, on the risk profiles or scheme, if you start out small, like you said before, now one's going to go out and borrow $800,000 to put into the share market, and they do that to go buy property. So you can see property is not your thing, or you can't borrow that. It's just starting small, I think, but just starting. We spoke about probably before that margin loans is one of the ways to get into that, but that's probably a much riskier appetite for.
It's very scary. As soon as you talk about margin loans, you can have margin calls, and that's what wiped a lot of people out in the GFC, where they lost their homes and a whole bunch of things. Just too much access to credit in the share market. They're different beasts. With margin loans, it's a set fee where the share market catches the elevator up. So it happens really fast. And if you don't have surplus money, you can lose those shares and actually create a loss. Because one of the things I've heard many times, Warren Buffett says it all the time, when the market goes up, he hasn't made any more money. When the market goes down, he hasn't lost anything either. It's just the reality is it has a value at some point in time, and how you can actually control that. Over time, the share market, the properties and all those types of things, and business is a whole nother risk. Buy or sell, not for everyone, that's for sure. Really being able to control your money, and the wealthiest guys and the wealthiest companies all use a form of leverage, which is debt. Even you look at the biggest companies like Coca-Cola, they use leverage. It's just common sense, but they obviously know what they're doing. So in most people's journey, they are going to have some debt, and hopefully it's good debt rather than the bad debt over time.
To move forward, if you can use someone else's money to move you forward, that's a good thing. Like you said, you've got to be the right person, the right risk at the time, and not just going willy-nilly and borrowing up to the hill to open the thing.
Yeah. It can be really it can be really dangerous as well. Too much exposure. And there's two things that generally kill investments when you're using leverage. What do you think those two things are? Cash flow, so your ability to earn money. So if you get hurt and you don't have insurances in place, a lot of people do what's called negative gearing. So if you've got to pay some money to keep things afloat. The other thing is divorce. If you get divorced, that generally costs a fortune. Just avoid at all costs if you can from a financial standpoint. But also if you get hurt and your ability to earn money and you need to call in that investment. So over the short term, It's very difficult to know if the property market's going to be up or the share market's going to be up or down. But history has shown us over a long period of time, they both go up in value. So the biggest risk I see is if someone hasn't got any protection in place, that's why they won't ever invest, because it's always those things about the what if. So getting the good debt on those investments that generate some money over time can be a great idea. And also, depending on what you're investing in, like when the interest rates in general go over 6%, I start to get a bit nervous for anyone using leverage into the share market, because to break even point brings it a lot higher and your risk is a lot higher. People going into property investments at this level of borrowing, generally they're negative quite heavily. The most average folk who invest in property, there are experts that can do it other ways, but generally it can be extremely expensive to hold the investment. So to break even over 4 or 5 years in those conditions can be quite hard as well, so that they don't become as attractive. When the interest rates were 2%, everything was on the table. You could invest in whatever you wanted. Even your borrowing capacity was right up, and now it's just a lot harder. And the rules in Australia in general are a lot tighter. Like, we don't want something happening like happened in the US where their credit went out of control and that brought in the GFC and all those sorts of things. Yeah.
Early on that, it's good that cost to hold borrowing or that debt, or cost to access those funds is what you should make on the investment. Otherwise, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Early on that, it's good that cost to hold, cost to access those funds is what you should.
Yeah. So really the best strategies for balancing it, build an emergency fund, having some money set aside if you lost your job or you got hurt, paying off your high interest debt first. It sounds pretty common sense, but a lot of people fail to pay that off because they'll do it later. It doesn't seem like it's a small amount of money, like 1,000, 2,000, could be 20,000, but they feel it's a small sum of money. So they'll go and try to borrow some money to do something else, and also investing what I feel while your experience grows. If you take too much leverage too soon or you borrow too much too soon, you really can't sleep. You're scared about the what ifs and all those type of things. And I know when I was a young guy starting out, I was terrified. My first home, my wife and I, cost us 140,000, and we had to borrow 120,000 to do it. And I was terrified. Like 120,000 these days was a different lifestyle, showing my age. But as your experience grows with whatever you're into, so the share market or the property market or business, then you can use more leverage because you've been through some ups and downs.
In fact, so not the what ifs, but take some of the fear away, because it's a share market and you've ridden a few cycles, you understanding, and so you're less fearful.
Yeah, absolutely. And some biggest mistakes to avoid. I find that using leverage, if someone's really trying to build their wealth and that's one of their goals, it takes a long time to pay off your mortgage. So if you don't invest at the same time while you're doing that, you've only really got one asset. A lot of people don't know if their own home is classed as an asset. Sometimes it'll be classed as a liability. But generally, if they're bought well, that will go up in value over time. It's really just understanding that time is on your side. So whether it's in the share market, if you look at the history of the share market, the value over time, or the property market, both of those are really passive investments in general, where business is a different type of class. That's an active strategy generally for most people. They're involved in it. There are some professionals that hands off and can do different things, but in general, there's hands-on. Investing, in my opinion, if you're going to use leverage, it's very difficult to pay out a home loan, then start investing.
We see all the time, if you look at the average loan balance in Australia, and then you look at what you pay, how long it takes you. If you can only afford the minimum repayment, what's going to take you 30 years to pay it out? You can do both at the same time, as long as condition. And the risk profile.
Yeah, and the other two, like I find if you've got credit card debt and those sorts of things and you haven't paid them out, it's very difficult to make a profit when you're paying 20% interest on these cards and so forth. And probably the last one for me is like investing outside your risk profile. Just because your friend done it or someone down the road had some type of experience, if you try to go too fast, no matter what it is, if it's the shares or property or whatever, generally you're going to get yourself into some trouble at some point and make the wrong decisions. And when people are put under pressure, I always talk about emotional intelligence. It's very difficult to make the right decisions when you're under extreme pressure and you're concerned about things. So you basically sell at the wrong time. So, if someone goes along and they want to build up all these houses or build up all these investments into the share market, you've got to experience the ups and downs because it has an actual value every day. If you put $5,000 in there, not such a big deal. But if you put $1 million in there tomorrow, and like the markets over the last week went down 5% or whatever, so you lost $50,000, but you haven't lost anything. It's just the value of the share market at that point in time has changed. But also it can go up 5% in a week as well. So making sure that you're within your risk profile so you can hold the investment, sleep at night. That's why probably one of those, a lot of people use leverage into property because they feel from what they've seen that generally prices go up. That doesn't mean they're all good investments though.
If there was you could value a house every day, you would see that.
100%. Yeah.
But you want to sell it, when you buy it, when you refinance it.
Yeah, and it's expected value as well. It's not an actual value because someone hasn't offered you that. When you're buying an investment property straight up, you've got two types of fees. If you sold it tomorrow, you'd be paying real estate fees again in general, and you've got stamp duty cost. There's different rules everywhere around that. It can be 30 to 100 grand to change your mind and sell that place again tomorrow. So it has to go up enough in value. It needs time. And with the share market, it can move around really fast. Have you got any final thoughts on all this?
I think we covered if you you mentioned your funds, so access to cash. The other thing you probably haven't touched on is having insurance to protect your income so that if all is shame, you're not forced to sell it at an inopportune time. So making sure you've got that coming up. And the cash flows that if interest rates raise, that you've got the capacity.
Yeah, 100%. For me, it's all about have a plan. Without a plan, it's just a wish. You don't know why you're going to whatever investment, and starting off small, making sure you understand what you're going into. Never invest in something you don't understand. There's so many things out there trying to take your money. Making sure you're protected, and as your experience grows, then you can get more aggressive with things. They'd go borrow to the hilt because they understand it, they've experienced it and so forth. And there's a lot of people that just hoping and going off other people's experience, which can be dangerous at times. So I think having a clear vision, a clear plan, making sure you get advice from whatever area you're going to is really important. Thanks for your time today, Cole. And thanks for watching. If you need any help with anything, please visit our website and book a time to chat. If not, I hope you enjoyed this podcast and feel free to share. I look forward to chatting to you next week.